a very warm welcome on this very cold day, and welcome to our end of season We Are Careers special. So today we're going to be tackling just a really small question, really. What is a careers professional? Nothing too big, nothing too meaty in today's show. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about what that's going to involve in introducing our guest over the next few minutes. But if you're only joining us for the first time, welcome to the We Are Careers show. This is your fortnightly bite-sized snippet of CPD about all things careers that you can join us with via YouTube, Facebook Community of Practice, and LinkedIn. We're going to talk about those channels through the CDI as we move through the show. If you've not come across me before, my name is Chris Webb. I'm a higher education careers professional and, of course, a member of the CDI. And I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic co-host, looking very, very festive today. Meet Sabiha. So, Sabiha, how are you doing? Are you enjoying the run-up to the Christmas period?
Do you know what? I really am. And it's snowing here in the northwest. So I don't know where you're watching right now. For those of you that are watching right now, is it snowing where you are? I just love snow. I don't like sleet or the black ice, but definitely loving the snow. So let us know which part of the world or the UK are you watching us from right now. If you're watching live, let us know in the chat box feature. But if you're watching on the replay as well, please do join in with the conversation. We love hearing from our viewers. And if you have questions for our fabulous guest Siobhan today, then start writing them in or even put them in the chat box for later, and we do monitor the chat box. We do. And remember as well, if you haven't already subscribed to this fabulous show, then make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Waiting for, because here's the thing, fellow viewers, we want to make sure that we give you the latest and the most current and the most up-to-date information that we possibly can. And the more subscribers we have, the more it helps us with making sure that we're as current as we can be. So how does it help you by hitting that subscribe and like and enjoying the content as well? Those of you that don't know me, I'm known as Meet Sabiha, and I work internationally where I'm helping people get unstuck and get back into career flow without the stress. And I also created the I Am Thriving Career Coaching Program, where I work with international coaches and I help them teach how to help create even more impactful transformations for their clients without wasting time on resources and doing things that doesn't get them results. Now, each show, we like to celebrate and we like to sort of kind of promote good practice, what we call our careers cheers. So Chris, who and what are we celebrating for our hashtag careers impact this week?
So yes, our kind of careers cheers, careers impact kind of crossover as it is now, as we're constantly in the process of promoting the CDI's careers impact campaign, which again, if you've not come across, is all about shouting about the work that careers professionals do in terms of supporting the clients that they work with and really raising the profile and challenging perhaps stereotypes of what careers work is and what it isn't, which fits very well with the theme of the show we have today. So again, the first thing we want to do is just give a real plug out to that, again, that careers impact campaign. Just a reminder that if you have got careers impact stories, inspirational stories, either about yourself or about someone else in terms of how you may have supported clients, do share these using the hashtag careers impact, and you can share these via all of the social media channels. Do make sure to copy in the Career Development Institute so that they can share these more widely as part of the campaign too. So I've got a few kind of careers cheers, careers impact crossovers that I'd like to share. And you know, it's a busy one.
Hit us with it, Chris. What have you got? What are we celebrating in the final show?
What's going on? So first of all, careers cheers to Mark Saunders. So Mark has put a fantastic thread on LinkedIn asking careers professionals for their insights about working with clients whose career options might be restricted due to things like cultural concerns, parental wishes, those type of things. Really, really interesting, not just in terms of the question itself, which, you know, caused a lot of reflection, but also the responses from careers professionals. There's some brilliant insights in there. Do check it out. If you look for Mark Saunders on LinkedIn, check out his most recent post, and I'm going to be kind of highlighting this in my sort of LinkedIn newsletter later in the week as well. It's a really, really interesting kind of thought-provoking piece from Mark. Our next careers cheers, again, just kind of going out. I know you're going to be mentioning this later as well, Sabiha, but this is just one that had been sent through to us saying, please make sure we give these people a shout out. Just to our newly elected members of the CDI board. So our new CDI president-elect, Pete Robertson, acting honorary secretary, Nikki Moore, and elected board member, Elaine Inglis. So congratulations to them and also to everyone who ran in the elections. And we are going to be putting a little bit more information about that in the news at the end of the show as well. And finally, this is kind of like a last-minute bulletin. It's just come in from Chris Target, only a mere couple of hours before the show. And it's a shout-out to Catherine Jennick, who is smashing it with her new What's Your Strength cards that have been adapted specifically for practitioners working with clients with SEND. She's having huge impact with them, not just in the UK, but also sending them all over the world and changing how schools and students consider their strengths. So a big careers cheers and careers impact from Jennick as well. So
we really need to get her on the show, don't we, Chris? I mean, I think that's going to be definitely a future guest in the pipeline for sure. But, you know, speaking of guests, you probably can see on the top hand screen there, we've got a fabulous guest, fabulous guest who's going to help us explore what does it mean to be a careers professional and how do we define that? And are you currently watching as a professional right now and having a bit of an identity crisis? Well, we've got a great guest with us this afternoon, this lunchtime, to help us at least start the debate and start the conversation. Siobhan's work has covered a whole host of sort of kind of breadth and depth of work and content that she has done in her sort of kind of career as a career professional. Without further ado, Siobhan, welcome to the show. And for those people who are perhaps maybe not familiar with your work, or perhaps maybe they are familiar with your work, but they've never had the opportunity to engage with you and learn more about how you sort of kind of got involved, what can you share with us? What's been your career journey today?
Oh, good afternoon. It is afternoon, isn't it? Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I have to say that you're on my last of the to-do list for this year, and really pleased to have been invited. I am a careers professional and a registered careers practitioner by background. I spent many years working in schools, higher education, the community. My area of expertise is around adults. That's where my passion lies. And eventually I sort of found, as we do in planned happenstance way, I found myself in higher education and working with iCeGS. I moved here about 18 years ago. And the rest is, you know, as they say, is evolving day by day.
Fabulous, Siobhan. Thank you. That really helps us sort of kind of get into insights and to learn more about sort of what you're doing and where you're currently at. And we're going to dive in now to what is a careers professional. And I know Chris has got some questions for you. So Chris, what do you want to ask Siobhan today?
Yes, thanks for that intro, Siobhan. I think, you know, probably don't need much of an introduction in the career space, but it's always nice. You know, we have some viewers who maybe may not have come across our guests. So appreciate the concise introduction, and thank you so much for joining us, our final show of the year, which is great. So I think, you know, this topic, when we were kind of thinking about this, I guess we sort of came back to this kind of idea that as careers professionals, you know, we're often working with clients, we're talking about professional identity, you know, and it's kind of a big thing about, maybe it could be to do with personal branding, it could be to do with about thinking what you want from your career, your next move. But actually, how often do we sort of think about that for our own profession and for our own sector? So that's kind of really, I think, the point that we sort of want to start from. And I guess the first question would be, do you think we've cracked that yet? So as a profession, do you think we've cracked what professional identity looks like for the career sector?
If I'm honest, no, I don't think we have. And I think there's many reasons for that. And I think some of them are historical, some of them are contextual. I think the challenges that we have as a profession is we are both fragmented and very diverse in what we do. So even just talking about my career journey and saying, oh, you know, I've worked in schools, worked in HE, worked in the community, blah, blah, blah. Many practitioners don't. Many practitioners have a very clear sense of themselves as working with young people, working with adults, working with HE perhaps, or the independent sector. So that sort of crossover of seeing yourself in a broad-based profession that has lots of opportunities and lots of different contexts to work in doesn't necessarily filter through for many practitioners. I mean, there is movement, obviously. There always is going to be movement. But I know when I've done research and I've said to people, you know, tell me, what's your professional identity? How do you see yourself as a careers professional? And they always caveated by, I work with young people, I work with adults, I work in HE. And I think that there's a challenge there for us, and I think there's been some positive work done on that in the last couple of years. I think the Career Development Policy Group has been really good. I'm part of that with colleagues from the CDI and AGCAS and VITI and JISC and lots of other acronyms out there. And I think the fact that we're talking about the importance for the sector and trying to create a single voice and a single narrative about where we are and what we need, I think does help bring the sector more broadly, more closely together rather, because I think there is that separation and that differentiation, and people don't necessarily see, I work in this bit, you work in that bit. We're not necessarily all in the same boat.
And do you think part of that, Siobhan, is down to from a policy point of view as well? So, I mean, there was an interesting article from Pete Robertson, our new CDI president-elect, in the recent AGCAS Phoenix Journal, all about why HE careers work often feels quite separate, because, of course, it's kind of attached to a slightly different set of policies than it is to maybe secondary school or college CDI, where actually, universities aren't included in that banner. So a lot of what they do is on the basis of the metrics that universities are judged on, rather than kind of some overarching strategy. So, across the country. So it's interesting to see that that's kind of quite different sometimes, whereas schools and colleges might be worried about gaps, for example, universities are worried about graduate outcomes, and that might steer how careers professionals, I guess, really identify themselves within those fields. So do you think that kind of partly has an impact on that?
Yeah, definitely. And you're absolutely right. And I think for us as a helping profession, it has evolved quite significantly. I would say probably when I trained, it was very much a counselling paradigm, sort of directed how we work, whereas more frequently and more recently, I think we've moved much more into an educative paradigm. And as a result of that, I think that has brought in some variation, but also that whole policy agenda, and particularly the targets we've seen, we see targets for practitioners working with adult clients. We see practitioners, in higher education being utilised to meet university metrics, whether it's through, if you work in higher education, through the TEF, or through just the destination data alone, changes the dynamic, and it changes the relationship and the responsibility. And I think the one thing that's always at the core for every practitioner, regardless of where they work and who they work for, is ethics. Ethics is central, and that doesn't matter whether you work for yourself, whether you work for a university, or wherever you work in the voluntary community sector. Our ethical commitment to our clients is central, and that does override policy, I think, to a certain extent, because I think we all stand behind that. But I think increasingly, policy and the fragmentation that policy has brought, you look at, people ask me, what's careers like in the UK? And I say, well, there isn't a careers in the UK with 4 different countries and 4 different models, essentially. And I think the different parts of the sector, geographically as well as sort of contextually, have professional identities to a greater or lesser degree. But I do think those external drivers around metrics are undermining. I think they really do undermine the professional practice often that we might have, in that practitioners aren't necessarily able to have the time to work with the clients that they would need to. We hear about careers advisors in schools, you've got your 20 minutes and that's it. And as a professional practitioner, it's very difficult. It's a massive challenge to do good work and make the difference that we want to make and we need to make in with those sorts of restrictions.
And I think it's a really important point that you mentioned there, particularly about the ethics side of things, that speaks to that sort of discord, I guess, between internally within the profession, how we see ourselves, and externally what people think careers work actually involves. And I know a lot of those comments have come back, based on the recent Education Select Committee hearings, for England, for the English career system, in terms of kind of how some of the MPs were framing questions, seemingly without maybe a clear idea of what careers professionals do. Do you feel some of that's about, the messaging that we get out as a profession? And I guess, to an extent, as you said, the fragmentation, but also the fact that actually within our profession, you've got employability advisors, careers counsellors, careers coaches, careers advisors, careers consultants, and that real kind of breadth, as you were saying earlier, of not just who we work with, but how that role's defined or titled. You know, does that potentially make it quite confusing for external stakeholders to understand, I guess?
I think it makes it confusing for everybody to understand. And, I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of that. We did a piece of work, 2014, and we looked at a load of job adverts. And, this is 8 years ago. And, over the period of the month, we found 103 different job titles that were used. And again, in different parts of the sector. If you work in higher education, many of the practitioners there would see themselves as consultants, and that's the term that's applied. And I think if practitioners, and people have said this to me, I say, well, when you describe what you do to somebody, what do you tell them? And they sometimes say, well, it depends on who I'm talking to. And I think that's not necessarily helpful, because if you're distilling the message around the work that we do and how important it is and the difference that we make for every different person that you speak to, then there isn't a narrative that is recognised or accepted. And I think, what you've just said about, in terms of policymakers not understanding what we do, I think that's true. I think it's for a number of reasons. I think, one of the greatest things that I think has happened to us in the last decade is the CDI. Before that, I was involved in the adult guidance in NAGA. We had a whole collection of professional bodies, and policymakers always said, well, we don't know who to talk to, and you've all got different messages, which is why, having a banner of the CDI and being part of, the career development policy group is really important, that we're coming together, and that collective voice and that collective call to arms in terms of what needs to be in place for careers advisors to get the recognition and to support and promote the evidence of the impact that we make is absolutely essential. But there is also responsibility on practitioners to do that as well, and to be positive and have pride in what we do. We are an important profession. We make a difference to people's lives every day of the week, and we're not very good at promoting that. So, really brilliant about your careers, the careers impact. That is what we need to be doing. We need to be capturing that evidence and promoting it. So, yeah, absolutely. All your stories, present them. We need that. That's what policymakers listen to. They want to know the individual stories of what people do, not what we as careers advisors say. That holds very little water, but actually the stories of real people does hold a lot of power.
I love, Siobhan, how you're sharing, and so many valuable points. In fact, we've got one Facebook user said your points are spot on, Siobhan. So, clearly people are really resonating with what you are sharing this lunchtime. So thank you for that. And just sort of, in terms of what we can do, and I know we're going to be sort of we're going to be getting to the point of that as well, but I just want to bring in some more comments that have come through. And one Facebook user has shared those 20-minute appointments are not just restricted to school, college-based establishment. This extends to funded adult career. And I'm glad, actually, because that was going to be, and I know you've touched upon it as well, that the voluntary sector, employability services too, it's all outcome-based rather than being client/person-centered. And that's hard when you as a professional are trying to navigate with these restrictions in place. And whether that's in, you're working in a school environment, because I know I will get phone calls, I will get text messages, I will get Instagram messages saying, oh, but Sabiha, in your show you didn't talk about what it means to be a career professional. I work in a private institution, or I work in an organization, or I work as part of the HR team. I'm part of the graduate route for sort of new graduates for one of the big companies, international brands, and I do I classify myself as a career professional. So there's a whole host there, isn't there? Dave called hey, Dave, great to see you, saying great point, we all need to get better at promoting the difference we make, not just what we do. And we've got Daniela, 103 job titles, Siobhan, Shocking.
Yeah.
And I just want to sort of kind of come back, pick up some of the others. People are saying it's great that we're talking about this today, and great to see Siobhan as part of the final show, and fascinating we are career show for the year. And of course, yes, thank you. I don't know who you are, Facebook user, but thank you. Yes, loving my hat too. And so as we continue this conversation, and as Chris said, we always want to sort of kind of crack open these conversations and these topics so that we can get you talking, get you thinking about what does that mean? How does that translate into your world? And how can we sort of, in your space of where you're sitting, how can that? And Siobhan mentioned there as well about how a difference an organization like the CDI has made. And if you're not a member and you're thinking, or you're maybe even watching today and thinking, the CDI, never heard of them. Who are they? What do they do? Head on over to the website. It's the CDI. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chris. We're putting up the link. There you go. It's on screen right now. Go and take a look. Find out. Honestly, for less than a frappuccino from Starbucks, a week, you get a whole host of support and content, particularly those that are coming new to the sector, or perhaps maybe you're working in an organization where perhaps you're the only career professional within the organization, because it can feel a little bit lonely in isolation. And the great thing about the CDIs is that, and Siobhan talks about it, community, a sense of belonging. What can we do as a community? And there is a whole host of stuff. Chris, I know you've got one final question, I think, for Siobhan. Have I got that right before we sort of kind of move on to the final part of the show today? So let's go for it.
Yeah, so I think, as always, Siobhan, we are dangerously close to running out of time with you. So we say this every show, it never gets old. But I suppose, what you've kind of talked about there and what you've reflected on is the fact that there are, dual responsibilities. There are responsibilities to policymakers, to make more of an effort to understand our sector, but equally, it's got to partly come down to us and the organisations that we work with, but also us as practitioners. So what do you kind of feel we can potentially do to mitigate some of this stuff we're talking about? What sort of, in terms of maybe making our professional identity clearer as a sector, and I guess communicating that with external stakeholders? How can we kind of make that better, both as practitioners and as part of, I guess, organisations as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more we can do, and I think you congratulated all our elect. Whatever they're called, all the different roles that people are taking going forward in the CDI. And I think, there are things like being part of the CDI, getting involved, because actually, if you just sit out on the sidelines, and it does bother me that so many practitioners are isolated. I was incredibly privileged when I trained and I worked in, in a career service, and I worked in an office, and we all came back at the end of the day and we talked to each other and we moaned, and, we learned from each other, and that learning was localized to us. But when you're working on your own in in the job centre or in a school or a college or wherever, you need that sense of belonging, that sense of community. Being part of a professional association is really important. Having access to all the, the varied CPT, having professional qualifications, and I know a lot of people, and they say to me, well, you say that, Siobhan, but what difference does it make? And it can make a lot of difference. It may, it does cost. We need employers to be stepping up as well as people funding themselves. We need to be investing in more CPD. We've got loads from the CDI, but this is a brilliant form of CPD. It's dead accessible. You can, put it on a Friday night with your glass of wine, whatever you want. And, in the work that myself and Claire Johnson have done, we talk a lot to people about, there's loads of different CPD. CPD isn't about training. It's about reflecting on your practice. It's about learning from others. It's about reading Careers Matters or the NICEC Journal or, anything else. It's about, hearing and using new bits of technology and talking to colleagues. There's a whole load of stuff you can do. And the more you engage, the more you involve yourself, then that contributes to your sense of belonging and it contributes to your identity. Because if you get, three of us together, we have an identity. We're talking about shared things. We have shared understanding, and that's regardless of the context. So I think, again, having the opportunity to bring careers professionals from lots of different contexts together to talk about their work, that identifies where we've got the shared common understanding and beliefs about what we do and how we do it, and our theoretical perspectives of the tools, of the practice, of the techniques, rather than just seeing ourselves as I just work in this small part of the sector. There's a lot we can do. Role modeling, hugely important. You're doing this in showcasing lots of really interesting people and lots of interesting topics. So these are the sorts of things. And I know people say, I haven't got time, we haven't got the resource. But, if we're professionals and we're committed to the clients that we work with, so that they get the best services that they can get, then we need to find ways of doing this collectively with the professional association, collaboratively with our employers and with each other as professional practitioners.
Absolutely, honestly, Siobhan, so many great points there. So I know you see you're getting thumbs up from Chris, so that's always a good mark. That's always a good mark. And in addition to that, you have lit a fire because the chat box is going off now, Siobhan. It is on fire right now. So I'm going to apologize right now because we are running out of time. So I'm probably not going to get to every comment, but I'm going to try and get to a few. And I know Sarah Clifford asked a question, and actually this fits in really nicely, which is that I know you've done research as well, Siobhan. You and your colleagues do tons of research. I know you recently a paper that you and I had a really great professional discussion, didn't we? I just reached out to you. I said, Siobhan, oh my God, I love your paper. Can we have a conversation? And you were gracious and kind enough to say, of course we can, Sabiha. And we had a really good conversation, and we went through, you explained why you wrote the paper, you and your colleague wrote the paper, and it really helped me sort of deepen my knowledge. And so Sarah's question is, I work in the NHS and working hard in enlightening how career support leads to retention, and would love to show them some impact research. Narrowing down job titles would help, which is something that we've touched upon. And bringing in about the research in your professionalism paper, Siobhan, where can people access that? And if you had to summarize it in a couple of sentences, because we are running out low on time, what would that be, Siobhan?
I think there's actually quite a lot of research around the FE sector and about how careers guidance makes a difference in retention, and there was a lot of research some years ago. The evidence base is all over the place, and that is something we do need to work on. I totally recognise that. There will be stuff on our website, publications, stuff we've done will always be available when we're able to. But I have been talking to the CDI a little while ago, and we were looking at how we could actually pull together an evidence base that's going to be more accessible. So I think that's a challenge for us in the research part of the sector. And I know Pete, in his standing for President-elect, he's committed to promoting the evidence base. So I think, that is something we do need to do. If there's anything anybody particularly wants, you've got my details, contact me and we can help find information and research for you. It is all out there. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to access.
And do you know what, Siobhan? We're going to have to leave it there for today. Sarah Clifford, I hope that answered your question. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. For those of you that are with us live, for those of you that are watching on the playback, please do engage, stay in touch, especially if you're in the Facebook community. Join the CDI. I've got somebody here saying, I have found membership of the CDI truly invaluable. Happenstance threw me into doing a level 6 guidance and development qualification, but the CDI support and inspiration and that of the community too really nurtured my new professional identity. And then we've got, I absolutely agree. Whew, okay, final show of the season, final show of 2022. So we're about to head on over to the news stories and the wider, sort of kind of careers guidance sector. But before we do that, we can't leave you. We can't end this season without an exclusive. So Chris, what exclusive news do we have to share with our viewers today?
Well, it's just a bit of a heads up, really. So we can't give you too much detail about this, but very much linked to what we've been talking about today. One of our regular viewers and contributors, Chris Target from CXK in the Southeast, has been in touch. So keep an eye out for something that they're going to be dropping next week, which is a reflective tool that careers practitioners can use in order to help them get a better sense of their professional identity within the sector. So do keep a look out for that. There will be full information dropping next week, but that will come from CXK. And if you haven't checked out CXK already, they've got some absolutely brilliant free resources through their YouTube channel and through their website as well. So do keep an eye out for that. I'm going to flash a little banner up just to let people know that that will be coming. So keep an eye out for that tool. And now, without further ado, we will move on to the CDI and wider careers news in our final episode of 2022. So, Sabiha, I know CDI news is jam-packed for this week. What have we got coming up?
I mean, they have just like lit up almost like so many things that kind of came through this today, you know, over the past few days. So I'm going to whittle through them as quickly as I can. So for some of you that may have joined, the CDI AGM took place. You heard Chris talk about it right at the start of the show. The new president-elect, Pete Robertson, was announced. Okay, there is a link that you can go and watch the replay. And you don't need to be a member to watch that. Maybe that might whet your appetite and get you excited and interested. Also, as well, the CDI elected some board members that you heard Chris talk about. Votes were casted, and the CDI can now confirm that Elaine Inglis received the most votes and therefore will be appointed an elected board director. We also have another notice of elections of the CDI Professional Standards Committee, and the CDI are pleased to inform that they have received validated nominations for 2 members of the PSC committee member professional development vacancy, and the names are John Walker and Sue Edwards. And it is now time for you to vote, and there is information on the website that you can find, and the voting closing date is on Tuesday the 3rd of January 2023. So make sure your voice is heard by voting in the CDI Professional Standards Committee. Number 3, your invitation to participate in this year's survey. The CDI are delighted to invite you to take part in the 4th hashtag CDI Big Listen survey. All details of this and how you can participate are available on the website. The Survey Monkey takes around about 15 minutes to complete, and the closing date for this is on the 16th of January at 9 AM. So don't miss out. And if you're ready to do it straight away, you know, I forget so many things, so it's always good that once you get that reminder, make your voice heard. Number 4, the CDI Careers Development Awards has been announced. Okay, it's a must-have date. It's going to take place next year on June 26th, 2023, and nominations are now open. There are 8 categories. I won't go through all the list. However, you can head over to the website. Nominations can be submitted to the UK CDI at thecdi.net. by 5 PM on a Wednesday, the 15th of February 2023. And then finally for today, where you can register for the EDI Big Conversation workshops that are going to be taking place on the 26th and the 27th of January. So following the appointment of Ifsa Shakur as the CDI's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Associate, there is a whole host of EDI strategies that are being set out and changed. And the CDI are working for change for the organisation as well as the wider profession. Now, there's a whole host of categories which include disability, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexuality and sexual identity, socio-economic and intersectionality. All of these and the information about when these workshops are going to take place, they are free to attend, are available on the website. Whew. Okay, that is me done for the CDI news for this season and for this year. Chris, what have you got in the main news today?
Well done for getting through all of that. There's so many CDI announcements this week and lots ahead for 2023, which is really exciting. So just 3 kind of pieces I want to spotlight for this week as we kind of lead into the end of the season. And the first one, most careers professionals probably won't have missed this, are the recommendations from Sir John Holman, so independent advisor to the government on CEIAG, and obviously architect behind the Gatsby benchmarks, or one of the architects behind the Gatsby benchmarks. And it's just quite interesting to have a look at the recommendations that he sort of put forward. There is some quite interesting stuff in there that's actually been picked and kind of dissected a bit by David Morgan from the CDI in a separate Twitter thread. So it's really worth going through all of that in detail, particularly the stuff around that all-age career system and what that might look like in practice. So do check that out if you haven't already. Slightly less positive news for our second news item. This is the news that traineeships are due to be scrapped by the government amid years of low starts. So unfortunately, what that's looking like it's going to mean is that in kind of non-devolved areas around, particularly around England, what you're going to see happening basically is that traineeships are not going to be funded anymore. They're going to be pulled into the 16 to 19 budget or adult education budget. And we don't know yet what that's actually going to mean in terms of what traineeships might meaningfully look like. So really disappointing. We've had people like AELP already coming out and kind of criticising this move and suggesting what might happen next. But it's going to be a really important one for people to keep track of, regardless of sort of what age of client you might be working with. And then finally, final news story, which I think is quite a good one to end on, as it's only just taken place yesterday. This week saw the conclusion of Global Careers Month. So this was taking place from sort of beginning of November through to the 13th of December. And you can actually watch the closing ceremony and hear all about what took place as part of Global Careers Month via YouTube, the link that we've got on the screen there. So those are the 3 news pieces for this week. Leads us very, very nicely to the end of the show, the end of the series, and the end of our calendar year involvement in We Are Careers. We will be back, fear not, in January. We're actually going to be back as soon as Wednesday, the 25th of January at 12 o'clock for the start of Series 8. Stay tuned to our socials for updates. We will let you know what the episodes are going to involve, what we're going to be bringing to you in Season 8. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. But that brings us really nicely to the end of the show and the end of the year for us. So all that's really left to be said is a very kind of Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from us at the We Are Careers team. Massive thank you to Siobhan for joining us today. Thanks, Siobhan.
Thank you. It's been absolutely joyous.
Fantastic. Thanks to everyone who's kind of been watching at home, not just today and not just through this series, but of course through the whole of 2022 and over the last kind of 2.5 years we've been running the show. Your support, as Sabiha mentioned, is what makes this community great. And a final thank you, of course, to my co-host, Sabiha, and we will see each other again in the career sphere in 2023.
We will indeed. Thank you. And I think, Chris, can we bring up, because there's a comment there, and I think this is a really apt comment. It's the one that says, this has been my first #WeAreCareers show. So it's been brilliant. I think that we're going to leave it there. That's going to be the final show. And for all of you, honestly, we can't do this without your support. So thank you so much. Till next year. Take care.
All the best. Take care.